What's happening, everybody? Welcome once again. This is Syracuse Basketball Postgame presented by Krause Health. We're live here on the Syracuse Orange Basketball Facebook page, live on YouTube. And hello to our friends watching on Twitter as well. We're here after every Syracuse basketball game on these channels, live and interacting with you. And tonight we're talking about a Syracuse loss. Kind of a mixed bag for Syracuse in this game. We'll discuss it. There were some ups and downs here. Ultimately, Virginia wins 73-66. The Cavs have won 4 straight against Syracuse. The Orange fall to 10-6 on the season, 3-2 now in ACC play. And we'll go over the highs and lows of this one. Get your comments throughout the show, highlighted throughout. So we are live after every game, but this does archive on the channels you're watching now, and we put it in my recap on syracuse.com, on social media. Very easy to catch up on. Maybe some of you are watching the replay somewhere in the future, but for those of you that can join us live, always appreciate that. It was an interesting game in Charlottesville. Syracuse did really everything it could to come back. They were just in too deep of a hole against Virginia. Virginia, who at one point was up 23 in this game, they only hit 3 field goals in the last 11 minutes. They did everything they could to hand this thing to Syracuse on a silver platter, but 23 points, just way too much to overcome for Syracuse in this one. Joe Girard and Judah Mintz lead the way for the Orange again. Jesse Edwards struggles. Malik Brown got some run in this game. John Bolajok started for Syracuse because Benny Williams was out sick in this game with a non-COVID-related illness. Frankly, I don't think Syracuse missed him out there, and we kind of saw what life is like without Benny Williams. And not that I don't think Syracuse should put him in the lineup, but they didn't need him out there tonight. In this particular instance, I think they got what they needed from Brown. Justin Taylor in his hometown of Charlottesville, I think played some quality minutes for Syracuse as well. Let's see a little bit of what you're saying, and then we'll jump in and give you some numbers from this one. Hello to Jermaine, who's jumping in tonight. There's Josh. Why do they have to be down in order to show some fight in this one? Yeah, they showed a lot of fight late, but Virginia had 3 separate 7-0 runs in this game. There was a lack of effort on defense at times. Great fight at the end, but you need 40 minutes of fight when you play a team like Virginia. Iris says, good evening, everybody. Looks like those guys fought back hard, just dug too deep of a hole. That's exactly how I would describe it there, Iris. There's Jimmy. Too many turnovers early, put him in a hole they couldn't climb out of. I'm sensing a theme here, friends, and that's exactly what happened in this game. Laurie's wishing they could play from behind before they got so far behind in this game. Brian notes it here too. Turnovers and threes. Amazing they got close, and much of the time without Jesse and 0 Benny, no starter forward rebounds. That's incredible to think about, just the continuing lack of rebounding from that position at Syracuse. Many positives, but obvious gaps in that one. We'll get Benny some vitamin C, get him feeling better in this one. Dale says, makes you wonder what might have been with a few less careless turnovers and a little more hustle for some rebounds that were there for the taking. Mark says, another day, another disappointment. Rebounding still non-existent in clutch situations. The 2-3 zone is useless. It's useless against Virginia. Tony Bennett, who, by the way, congratulations to him, became the all-time leading winner in the history of Virginia basketball in terms of a head coach. So congratulations to him on that. He's now 11-3 against Syracuse, by the way. Game lost in the first half, according to Mark. So you guys keep going at it here. Hello to Mary Ellen, who's in as well. Missed too many shots underneath. I could have made those shots, and I'm only 5'2". Jesse was flat the whole game. I think Virginia really did a great job defending Jesse, and I think they gave kind of a blueprint to some other teams in the ACC. Not that every ACC team can play defense the way Virginia does, but that's how you get to Jesse Edwards. Rattled his cage. Monir Hema, I think, had some quality minutes for the Orange in this one. But you guys keep going at it a little bit. I want to jump in and look at some numbers from this one and give you guys some numbers from this one as well. So Syracuse actually outscores Virginia in the second half of this game, 40-38. They were down 35-26 at halftime. And that's another thing. Syracuse goes on an 8-0 run to make it a 9-point deficit at halftime. But Virginia kind of soars out. They go on a 12-0 run to start the second half, and that just dug too big of a hole, as we mentioned, for Syracuse to get back in this thing. They shot an appropriate 44% in this game, 24 of 54. Virginia took just one last shot in this game and made one last shot, 23 of 53. That's 43%. The Orange were 8 of 14 from three-point range. Virginia, 12 of 26 from beyond the arc. So another team has a lot of success against Syracuse. Virginia just 15 of 22 at the free throw line. Syracuse was 10 of 15. Points off turnovers was big. The Orange had 16 turnovers in this game. Virginia cashed in 23. Syracuse did get 17 points off turnovers, just 10 for Virginia. That's what they average on the season. Syracuse out-rebounded Virginia 37-30 despite the inequities season. And what we're talking about with Syracuse rebounding-wise, they hit the boards in this game and got what they needed. So that was not overall a big problem for Syracuse. There were some possessions they could have gotten on it better, but to out-rebound Virginia, you'll take that given Syracuse's, as we said, they've really struggled in that department this year. Virginia, 22 assists. Syracuse ends up with 15, and there were just enough possessions where Syracuse showed they can move the ball and can counter a defense, could be patient with the ball. We'll get into Judah Mintz here shortly, but I thought he passed another big test in this game, but there weren't enough possessions in this particular game that Syracuse moved the ball the way they needed to. Look, Virginia is a team. They're going to wear you down. You have got to be disciplined. You've got to move the basketball, and they just pounce on every mistake you make. But man, to think of the fact that Virginia only had 3 field goals in the last 11 minutes of this game, and Syracuse let that slip. That shows you how far in the hole they were. They get Virginia again at the end of the month at the Dome, and, not that you're going to get that kind of deficit again, but makes me believe that Syracuse actually might give Virginia a game down the road here. Joe Girard led Syracuse with 19 points. He struggled for a lot of this game, but rallied in the second half. He finished 5 of 9 from three-point range in this one. Judah Mintz had a terrific second half for Syracuse. 18 points for him, 7 of 14 shooting, 4 rebounds. He had 3 assists, 4 turnovers in this one. He's got to cut back on the turnovers, but he's trying to make some things happen out there, and younger players making mistakes. Look, for that kid to get 18 points, hit a couple of threes, be aggressive, get in the paint. This kid, he just doesn't fear anybody. I thought Virginia would really challenge him and take him out of the game. He played 35 minutes in this one. I think he passed the test. I think he now knows what it's like to play a team like this and gain some valuable experience in this. It really hurt Syracuse not having Jesse Edwards in his usual flow here, just 4 points. He did get 10 rebounds on the night. Only committed 1 foul in this game, so it wasn't foul trouble that kept him out. He just got pushed around. Shedrick did a terrific job for Virginia. Virginia overall harassed him, took him off his spots. Syracuse missed a bunch of bunnies in this game, too. They missed 5 layups in the first half. Jesse missed a couple of easy ones. You lose 73-66. That all adds up. It all adds up against a team like Virginia. Malik Brown did a terrific job tonight. I really liked the game he played. I think that's a real positive for Syracuse. 10 points, 8 rebounds for him. Played 36 minutes. We mentioned Benny Williams out with a sickness. Justin Taylor back in his hometown. 7 points on the night, couple of rebounds, played 23 minutes. Symir Torrance got a little run for the Orange. We mentioned Monir Hema, 6 rebounds. And officially, I think he had 4 block shots. Let me jump in here. My stats I'm looking at, I got to look at the bigger stats here. I think he ended up with 4 on the night. But one way or the other, Hema held his own in there against Virginia, and it was unfortunate that he had to, because obviously Jesse Edwards not on his game, and that's not a good sign for Syracuse. You need Jesse on his game, and look, he's going to have bad nights, but now that you're in the thick of ACC play, you're playing good teams. You get Virginia Tech next. You got Miami around the corner here. These are opportunities for quality wins, and Syracuse is a desperate need of quality wins in the eyes of the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee. They don't have any quad 1 wins. They need more quad 2 wins. They got to get it moving here if they're going to put themselves in a serious conversation for the NCAA Tournament. All right, back into the comments from you guys. Appreciate you coming by. As always, our guy Chris watching all the way from Sacramento. Not sure how you hold a team scoreless for 9 minutes in the second half and lose. You get down by 23. That's out, right? So you guys brought up the rebounds. So Chris Bell, starting forward for Syracuse, didn't rebound. John Bolajak started for Syracuse, didn't get a rebound. Where are we at here? So those are your starting forwards. Brown came in, had 8. Taylor had a couple. We mentioned Hema, who had 6. You're getting a huge contribution from your bench, but the starters continue to really struggle in that department. Matt says lack of ball movement just kills this team in stretches. Ball movement better in the second half, and the scoreboard reflected that. That's absolutely right. I don't know why they don't understand that you have to do that for 40 minutes against a team like Virginia. I don't know if Jim Boeheim emphasized that enough, because you want to be you and you want to play your game. But Virginia is one of those teams that alters your game. You have to alter your game. You don't want to get too much out of your own headspace, if you will. But there were several possessions. They moved the ball well, and it works. Be as patient as Virginia. You know it's going to be a low-scoring game. By the way, if you score 66 points against Virginia, typically that's good news for you, as that's been a stat that, if you score 62 or less against Virginia, Virginia's 8-0. But if you get over that 62-point mark, the percentages go way up. And Syracuse scored 66. I thought that'd be good for them, but obviously Virginia got a few more points and took this one. Tim noting that Virginia got a lot of good looks at threes, and they made them, the Orange team, to always have to work so hard to get a low-quality look. That just continues to be a big issue for Syracuse in the zone. As Antonio notes here, we score 2, the opponent scores 3, the 2-3 zone. I like how you put that. In that sense, you got to hustle on defense. You got to close out shots. I'll give Virginia credit this. They hit some open shots, as a few of you guys have noted here, but there were a few contested threes that Virginia had, particularly in the first half of this game. We didn't really look at the Virginia numbers here, but Beekman with 13 points. Franklin had 4 3-pointers in this game. He had a couple contested shots. McNeely got a bunch of open ones. Syracuse really let him, kind of let it fly from outside. But you got to contest a few more shots, make a few more bunnies. The 9 minutes there where Virginia barely scored, you might pull this one off, and you don't get this many chances against a team like this. In Syracuse's case, they get him again at the end of the month, as we noted here. But with Jesse being MIA, as Tim notes here, that's tough. You need Jesse in the flow of things. Mark asks, how many missed layups tonight? I want to say it's about 8 or 9, Mark, because they had 5 in the first half and they missed a couple more in the second. That's not an official stat, but it was a bunch. It was a bunch for sure. Matt noting maybe with the way they played in the last 10 minutes, they should press all 40. They've got the bodies. Players 3 to 11 are basically equal. Press help the offense. So what if you give up some buckets? You can't play press for 40 minutes. You can't do that. You just can't. And Mark, I'm going to ask you here without highlighting your comment. You got to watch your language, man. I know it's the internet, but let's be civil in here and let's not let's not have some bad language like that, or I'm gonna have to kick you out of here. Okay, that's your one warning, guys. I don't like the bad language, even though it's the internet. I get it, but let's be civil in here with that. But going back to what we were saying there about you can't press for 40 minutes. That's just look. These are highly tuned 18 to 22-year-old athletes. There's enough timeouts in this game, but that doesn't work. That's not a good strategy. If you're Arkansas back in the day, 40 minutes of hell, okay, maybe, but that's not what Syracuse does. Should they press more? Should they go to the press earlier? I thought Malik Brown did a terrific job at the top of the press. Speaking of which, you can talk me into more press. Look at what Virginia did in that Sweet 16. Malachi Richardson back in the day. Remember Malachi? Woo, right? You can talk me into more press. Press for 40 minutes? Yeah, I can't agree with that. You can't get me going on that one. Mikey says you play tough man-to-man, you won't have to press. The man-to-man, let's throw press out the window here, right? Where's the man-to-man gone, right? Like, I thought this team would play more man-to-man. I think they can play more man-to-man. If you don't think press is the answer, I don't think it was that bad. If you're not getting the defense at the top of the zone, which let's be honest here, I've defended Joe Girard more than anybody. I would see him if you listen to my radio show this week. Perhaps you heard that, but he's not a good defender. Judah Mintz is learning as a defender. I'd rather have those guys playing man-to-man than trying to catch up in the zone and just giving these teams way too many open shots. You can't do that. So interesting discussions here, but maybe they went to the press a hair too late in this one for it to really make a difference. David asked the eternal question with this team: how do our starting forwards combine for 0 rebounds? And it wasn't even the same 2 starting forwards. You had a different guy in there, and John Bull and Jock. I like John Bull, but I like John Bull in spots. Jim always talks about how well he practices. He's not an offensive player. He's a great passer. I thought he could rebound and would be a better rebounder, but for him not to get any, it's encouraging that Malik Brown did. And I don't know why Jim keeps shying away from him. He should have started this game, and he played a bunch of minutes. It's essentially like he started in this game, but John Bull's got his weaknesses. I like John Bull as a person. I like him as certain aspects of his game, but I'm actually surprised he got the start. They just wanted some length in there in the zone, I would imagine at this point. Jeff notes how this team is a slow starter. You can't beat good teams that way. You essentially cannot beat Virginia that way. They did kind of go against what they typically do, though, in that they were a slow starter in the second half. That has not been typical of this team. They did start slow in the first half, but cut it to 9. 9 still a pretty significant deficit against a good team, but they did cut it back. Going into halftime, Virginia goes on that huge just dry spell where they couldn't hit water if they fell out of a boat. And then, but Syracuse started slow enough and dug themselves enough of a hole where it just was not going to make a difference in this game. Let's see. There's our guy, Mike. What's happening, my friend, from El Paso? Let's see. Just catching up a little bit with you guys here. Iris agrees. More press, just not the entire game. Yeah, you can talk me to that for sure. Bill notes that it was ugly, but the way they fought in the second half will win a game later. I'm wondering who that game is later, though, right? Is that a win over Miami? I think you're going to have to play that way to beat Virginia Tech coming up in a few days. I know Virginia Tech has slipped a little bit since getting to ACC play, but I don't like that matchup either for Syracuse. I loved how they played the other night. I was watching them play Clemson. They lost that game, but that's a tooth and nail tough game that Syracuse is going to have a lot of trouble with Clemson. They don't play Clemson until next month. Oh boy, that is not going to be pretty because that team can just rain threes like there's no tomorrow. They are the worst team for Syracuse to play at the rate they're playing defense at this point, but that's, neither here nor there at this point. So I think you make a good point there that maybe this could pay off against a better team as a younger team learns. And when do we stop saying that? There's a question right there, guys. When do we stop saying this is a young team? Like, look, you're 16 games into a season. I understand Judah Mintz doesn't know what he doesn't know, and some of these younger players don't know what they don't know, but this is your team, all right? So you're not far enough down the road in ACC play. You're only 5 games in to really know the rigors of that schedule, 2 games in 3 days, and some of the things that happen in the schedule. But at some point, we got to stop saying that, right? At some point, you are who you are, young, old, everything in between. Virginia, now think about this. Virginia comes in returning 91% of their scoring from last year. That led Division I basketball. And look, Virginia was an NIT team last year, so take that for what it's worth. But Syracuse keeps running into these teams that are really experienced, but they beat one of them. Notre Dame's got 6 players in either in the lineup or that play regularly that are seniors or grad students, beat Notre Dame on the road. Pitt's very experienced. It has a lot of talent in the transfer portal, only lost by 2 to them, and Virginia today. So that doesn't seem to matter when Syracuse plays these very experienced teams because they're coming through with strong efforts, not winning a lot of those games, unfortunately, but playing well enough to win in that sense. Brian notes, I'm surprised that Hema stayed out there so long without following out quick. I think they needed to get Jesse back in there, as RJ notes. No, Jesse was a big factor. I felt like there was 2 or 3 possessions. How can I put this? It was 2 or 3 possessions too late that Jesse came back into the game. I think that Jim Boeheim, I think he slacked a little bit on that. I think Jesse had to come back in. I know Jesse wasn't playing well. Thanks, Robert. Appreciate you watching from Florida. St. Pete Beach, baby. Let's go. He likes the show more than the games. Let's hope we can turn that around for you, Robert, because we want to watch fun basketball games, right? But going back to Jesse, I felt like, I know he was struggling, but look, he's a better offensive option than Hema. He's got to be in there. He's your guy. He's your anchor, right? You got to ride or die with Jesse Edwards, and I felt like he was on the bench just a smidge too long there because Monir Hema, as much as I love how much he plays and rebounds, block shots, you need Jesse in there. He's your guy. Mike says there's a discussion to be had for the missed free throws and missed layups because with a comeback, we make half of each of them. We win this game. Mike, I completely agree with you because they missed a bunch of bunnies. They missed enough free throws for it to matter. Virginia goes on this huge dry spell that all adds up. All that stuff adds up. 40 minutes of basketball. That's why I say free throws matter. Because if you're consistent as a free throw shooting team, and Syracuse has been good this year at the free throw line, But, going back to, and Virginia wasn't good at the free throw line tonight either. They're 15 of 22. Syracuse was 67%, 10 of 15. That's a pretty good number, but Virginia got to the free throw line 7 more times and shot 68%. So I'm trying to do the math in my head here. You want to be around 74%, 75%, missing just a couple, adding a couple of those bunnies that they missed, as you brought up, Mike, and you lose a game like tonight, even when you put together a nice comeback. So nobody likes the moral victories, but I think there is some things that Syracuse gained. They measured themselves against one of the better teams in the ACC, and their shortcomings came through, but they also gave Virginia at home about as much of a fight as you can give a team in the second half. I brought it up earlier. They actually outscored Virginia 40-38 in the second half. And think how the second half started with a 12-0 run by Virginia. At one point, I think Virginia was up like 21-9 in the second half in that scoring, and Syracuse ends up outscoring them. So I think that's kind of the problem with this team, though, guys, is that it's too streaky. It's too streaky. Streaky games don't work against Virginia. And Virginia did everything you possibly could. Jimmy, good point. Huge call at the end of that game on Hema, that illegal screen because a Joe Girard 3 went in. Right around that time, Girard, they changed a 2-point shot to a 3-point shot. So it was just like, man, like team of destiny kind of thing adding up there. Mike, Benny was out sick today. So it was announced about an hour before the game that Benny Williams, in case anybody else watching missed it as well, that Benny had a non-COVID related illness. So that's what kept him out of this game. We'll see if he's available for Virginia Tech in a couple of games. Dale says Division I players shouldn't need motivating to play hard. Riding the pines, the only language they understand. Dale, I'm glad you brought that up. Now, part of this was where Syracuse was at. About 9 minutes to go, I look up and I see this lineup. Judah Mintz, Joe Girard, Chris Bell. No, I'm sorry. That's the wrong one. Here it is. Judah Mintz, Symir Torrance, Malik Brown, Monier Hema, Chris Bell. You never see that lineup with 10 minutes to go, but it just showed you where Syracuse was at that point and how much of a comeback they still had to mount at that point of the game, and did, and got within striking distance to where Virginia was nervous in this game. But that also shows you, so Torrance is in. That means Joe was struggling at that point. Brown is in. As we mentioned, Benny's not available. Hema's in. Jesse's struggling. And Chris Bell, who still, again, look at the rebounds. Big fat 0. You and I had as many rebounds as Chris Bell had in this game. That's a pretty rare lineup, though, to see at that point of the game. So at the very least, Jim's at a point here, 5 games into ACC play. He doesn't have that 8-9 man rotation locked down. Now, tonight he was forced to go deeper on the bench because Benny was out. And sometimes guys will get in for just a couple of minutes. You look at the box score and there's 11 players, but who's playing like meaty, good minutes in this game? That ends up at about 8-9, but it doesn't feel like this is a team that's locked in on its, usual Jim Boeheim 8-9 rotation. I think that's a good thing. I still think Quadir Copeland can help this team. Hema obviously can help this team. You only want him in there when Jesse's struggling, but he could do it. I think Malik Brown should be in more. I think he's really pushing for a starting spot here. He doesn't know what he doesn't know, and Jim keeps talking about Benny's the best player at practice and all this. And look, Benny was sick tonight, so you got to be fair there. But as my friend Stephen North Syracuse, who sometimes is in the chat with us here, brought up earlier this week and made a great point. Imagine going to a play, right? And you go to the play and the set falls down, the actors forget their lines, and you just had a bad experience, right? And you talk to the person who owns the theater after the show, and they're like, "Oh man, you should have been here for rehearsal." Right? Doesn't matter. I'm here to see the show. That's Benny Williams, right? That's Benny Williams. That's just, we don't see enough of it when the bright lights are shining and the game's being played. Again, he was sick tonight, so let's be fair there. He's still going to play. I still think he has a role on this team. But Malik Brown, I'm sorry, that kid just plays his butt off, right? Judah Mintz sets an example of how to play the game. Malik Brown sets an example of how to play the game. There's too many guys on this team that don't. There's too many guys that don't hustle. the way they need to for 40 minutes, that don't get rebounds and don't do the scrappy, dirty work they need to do. And I'd rather have those guys out there than not. Just my opinion. Wonder if you guys agree with that. James noted he was doubled but missed a lot of shots and was not aggressive. That's on Jesse, I would imagine, James. And you're right. He missed a bunch of bunnies tonight, which is uncharacteristic for him. Joe missed a couple of bunnies at the rim. Everybody, it seems like, missed a couple of those. As Chuck notes here, Benny may push it at practice, but he's really only played to his hype twice this year. Now, again, it goes back to what I said earlier, Chuck, about when do we stop saying this is a young team? Benny's essentially a freshman. He didn't play enough last year to really even make that bridge from freshman to sophomore. But when do we stop saying that, right? Like he's, the hype, what he needs to do at his position. And so the thing with Benny is he's shown he can do it. 16 and 11 against Boston College. He'll have these moments where he puts a putback in, he grabs a rebound. He's really good at that mid-range jumper, that free throw jumper. He's gotten a lot better at that. So he has his moments, right? He's like right there, but every time he takes a step forward, he takes 2 steps back. And that's the issue with him at this point. So until they round that out, I just give me the guy that's going to hustle and is going to get in there and is going to bang inside. And he's going to get the rebounds, right? I'd rather have that. Bernard says he thinks this team will continue to improve and be entertaining at times, but short of the NCAA tournament by a few wins. Bernard, I think that is exactly the path they're on right now. That is exactly the path they're on right now. Because Virginia, okay, so that's a quality loss, if you will, but Syracuse has enough of those. Virginia Tech, that's going to be a split. Quad 1 and quad 2. So you got to beat Virginia Tech when it's a quad 1 game. Miami's coming up. There's the last I looked at it, at this point, I think there's 6 quad 1 games left and 7 quad 2 games left for Syracuse. You got to put some wins in the board. You got to put some wins on the resume. And here's this team. At one point, they're down by 23 points. They come back, get within striking distance, show they can beat a team like this. If a few more of those bunnies go in, a few more free throws go in, a few more possessions, they move the ball, right? But they don't have time on their side. The way this team is developing will at time out that they're going to beat teams like that. At the very least, when they go into mid-February, into late February, and into March, will they be in the conversation for the tournament? Right now, it's exactly what Chuck said. Let me highlight it again. It feels like, whoops, wrong Chuck highlight there. Sorry, buddy. Go back to what you said about how this team is going to show up just short. Or it was Bernard, I'm sorry. This one right here. That's this team at this point. And that won't change unless they start beating some of these quality quad 1 games and quad 2 games that await them in the very near future. So what do you say we stop there for tonight, friends? We'll be back when Syracuse plays Virginia Tech coming up here. You guys can help me out here in the chat while I'm looking it up here, but I always like to look this up to make sure because like tonight was a weird time, 5 o'clock start time. These start times are all over the place this year. And this game actually started about 12 minutes late because the game prior to it went late on the ACC network. A 7 o'clock tip for Virginia Tech. That's at the Dome Wednesday. See, there you go. I'm glad I double checked myself because I said Tuesday. Wednesday is when we'll be back doing this very post-game show on all these channels, wherever you're watching us tonight. Orange Weekly on Thursday to follow after that. So a couple of things coming up here. So that's when we'll be back. 7 o'clock tip on Wednesday night. Come on back, hang, talk some hoops like we always do. Appreciate everybody jumping in here. Hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. Go Bills, DeMar Hamlin, and a shout out to my friend John Murphy, the voice of the Buffalo Bills. He's recovering from a stroke. Seems like everything's going to be okay, and Murph's going to be make a full recovery. He's going to be out of commission for a while, but man, what a week it's been for the Buffalo Bills, to say the least. See if they can go out there and get a win over the Patriots tomorrow. Whoever your football teams are, hope you're rooting for them. Hope they do well. Got a national championship game on Monday. See if Georgia can take down TCU in that one and get back-to-back titles. So a lot going on in the wide world of sports, friends. But from a Syracuse basketball standpoint, we'll see you again Wednesday night right here after they take on Virginia Tech. This has been Syracuse Basketball Postgame presented by Krause Health. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, everybody.